Let's talk now about 5 foundational principles of competing biblically. I mentioned before that we're not taking this stuff in a progression like they feed upon one another. This is just an articulation that has developed over, frankly, for me, 25 years of trying to get things down on paper and how we think about them, how we verbalize them. So there'll be a lot of overlapping. I'm just saying in advance, there'll be overlapping of stuff. I already mentioned there'll be repeating of stuff. I don't mind the repeating because of the principle of the aha, that you never know when a guy's going to get it. He may have heard it 50 times, and the 51st times is the one. We're trying to say the right things the right way and stay at it. At some point they kick in. They kick in deeper. The more they become who you are instead of what you do is a better thing. So that embracing thing of the depth of emotion, the mentally, the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, even when that applies, to the depth that I embrace it, to that depth I can reproduce it, and thus it can multiply. And so these 5 foundational principles are similar. They overlap with what I call the pillars, and it's going to overlap with other stuff we're talking about. I'm just saying to you, don't feel bad about that. I'm not going to feel bad about it. This is not a 1, 2, 3, 5 progression. It's just a process of thinking about it, of which there's going to be overlap and involved. That's just part of it. So 5 foundational principles. First one is team over the individual. This is about dying to yourself for the sake of the kingdom. That'd be a spiritual context. For the team, it's about submitting yourself for the sake of the team. We've mentioned before John Wooden's line, when an individual chooses to become part of a team, he ceases to exist. That means he still is an individual, but compared to the team, it's as if he doesn't exist. Sure, he does exist. He plays a position. He's going to have a role. He absolutely exists. But compared to the team, it's as if he doesn't. Does that make sense? So we use a Bible verse a lot in the discipleship school. Scriptures say, hate father, mother, sister, brother, wife, and children for the sake of Christ. Does that mean you're going to hate them? No, you love them. The Bible talks about how husbands and wives should treat each other and children. So clearly there's a complete love toward these humans. But compared to love for God, it's as if you don't love it at all. That's an important distinction. It's not an all or nothing deal. It's a way to contrast and compare. And God's trying to say, you need to love me more than you love your closest humans, who I want you to love more than anything on this planet. And in the same way, we love competing. And we are existing as individuals, but compared to the team, it's as if we don't exist at all. We're not denying that we exist. We're just saying compared to the team matters more than the individual, right? And I'm the head coach, let's say. But it's what matters to the team. The team's what matters. I'm part of the team. I happen to be the overseer of the team. We're all called a team. We have different roles. There's head coaches, assistant coaches, there's players, there's managers. They're all part of what we call the inner circle. The outer circle is everybody else. And the inner circle and outer circle have different rights and different responsibilities. And so when we're talking about the team over the individual, it's not to the cessation of the individual. He still is a unique person that we care about deeply. But in the climate of the culture of competing biblically, the individual submits himself to the team's good. The individual says, not my will, but yours be done. In an ideal scenario, a player is going to say something like, I'd like to catch, but if there's a better position for me that's best for the team, that's what I want. If you want me to start, that's what I want. If you want me to be a backup, that's what I want. A sport example that's been current is the basketball. I'm a Golden State Warrior fan, but you have a guy named Andre Iguodala who's an all-star, and the head coach comes in, Steve Kerr, when he first takes over, and his first order of business is ask Andre to be a backup and not a starter. And for the sake of the team, he steps out of a starting role when he was an all-star at another program, and here in this program, he's going to be the 6th man. Well, everybody would say he was instrumental in all the world championships they had as a 6th man. He brought something to the table in Steve Kerr's vision that was critical. Well, they won 3 championships out of 5 years, so odds are he had a pretty good vision, unless you think they would have won 5 out of 5 if Andre had been a starter, which I don't think anybody's even willing to go there as they see how it played out. But Andre bought into Steve Kerr's vision. He could have blown up the team because here he was a starter who's now made a backup. Well, he wasn't really. He was the 6th man, but he was as if he was a starter and frankly played as much as anybody else. My point is, the player could have blown up that team by saying, I want to start, I don't agree, I don't want this. He could have submitted with an unhappy heart, which everybody would know. It would be hard for him to not grumble and complain. Can you see how this all fits together? That you have to have people from the bottom up that say, not my will, but yours be done. That say the team is more important than me. That it's we over me. This is fundamental. It's fundamental in the kingdom of God. It's fundamental. The leaders go first and they go further. The father, though he is the head of the family, dies to himself for the sake of his wife and children. This is the belief. Now, granted, some people even that follow Jesus have a different view of the family than that, and that's a whole nother conversation. We're just talking to it in light of teams or organizations where people have roles. Though the husband and wife are both humans that are equally under God, there's different roles in the father and the mother and the husband and the wife. It's biblically clear. Now, how you play that out in your marriage and your family is going to be nuanced. There's going to be different convictions. But for the sake of this conversation, let's understand that the leader goes first and he goes further. And that he dies to himself as a picture and a model of saying, not my will, but yours be done, to the family's best, even if it's not to his best. That has to be true with the head coach, the assistants, everybody. That's why it's called mutual submission. We all say, not my will, but yours be done. No, not my will, but yours be done. And at the end of the day, both are submitted themselves to the will of God, and then whatever the decision is acceptable because both have died to themselves. That would be the ideal world. That's aiming for perfection. That's an assistant saying, here's my conviction, not my will, but yours be done. And the head coach saying, here's my conviction, not my will, but yours be done. Somebody has to make a decision, and I'm going to make the decision. It's a heart. It's a heart. It's a heart. It's a principle of the heart. Second one, long term over the short term. This is about thinking toward eternity and working backwards. It falls along that same line. Here's something I said to players. They came in, and I'd say, you're thinking about this year or this career, but you're only going to be here. This is college or high school. You're only going to be here 4 years or 3 or whatever. I'm going to be here, hypothetically, 10 or 20 or 30. So we're making decisions not about you or your team or your career. We're making decisions about the program. And once you stop playing, you're still part of the program. You have a different role. You're now an alumnus. My hope is if I do a good job as a head coach, you feel a part of the program even after you leave. And if I'm doing a good job, I include you in your program in an acceptable role as a supporter or a booster or a friend or a mentor or whatever, that this program continues. The best programs that have history and legacy and longevity and tradition is they keep people involved through the sequence after their playing days. That's how you develop this family feel. It's an extended family, and that's why you have to think this is about the program, not about the team. This is about the team, not the individual. This is about decades of familial structure, not about just this little window of time. In fact, the head coach could say, even if I go, if the athletic director in the program has bought into it, somebody's going to take over me with shared convictions and values so that it will continue even though it isn't the same face in front. Our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. It's true with a father. At some point, he's going to die, and the children are going to take over. One of the parents, both the parents are going to, and the children take over and carry on the legacy, God willing, of the best of the family traditions and beliefs and values. This would be how it works with continuity. These are our targets. This is what we're aiming for. Does it play out that way perfectly? No. At all, hopefully. But these are our targets. We have to have a target. If you don't have a target, you're not going to hit it. So what's your target? Our target is the long term over the short term. So it's over a lifetime. It's not over this year. Third principle, inside person over the outside person. This is about the heart. This is about internal. Your internal drives your externals. Your heart, your thinking, your emotions drives then eventually your behavior. And so we're always thinking about coaching the heart. That's terminology that's used nowadays. This is, again, it's not trying to be touchy-feely. There's a practical aspect too, right? We're physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental creatures. But if all you do is coach the physical, you're going to miss out. Because regardless of the ability and how trained he is, if his heart is wrong, if his attitude is wrong that day, if he's in a bad emotional spot, it's not going to translate into productivity. Now, we said the goal is not productivity, but at the end of the day, people at some level are going to close the gap of their performance to their potential, and your chance of closing the gap between your potential and performance is going to be linked very significantly to where your head's at that day, where your heart's at that day. Not just where your body's at. If all you do is make sure that the body's healthy and ready for game day, if something bad's happened or they're in a bad spot emotionally, mentally, due to something related to the game or unrelated, his gap is not going to close as well as it could if he had all his ducks in a row. If he was healthy spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And if you don't treat humans who are four-part creatures in all four parts, then you're missing it. And some people, frankly, only coach the visible, what's seen. Technique, fundamentals. Is that important? Absolutely. But I promise you, the mind and the emotions of the will shut down way before the body does. If anything, the Navy SEALs and Special Forces have taught how far the body can go. The body can go much, much farther than we conceive or consider it when it's driven there by force. But our minds and our emotions, they may not allow us to go there because they're blocked or they're unwilling. That's why the will is so important in this equation. We need everything aligned. The inside person over the outside, we're coaching the heart. Invisible over the visible. It's a correlative thing in that part. Is I can't see my, so to speak, heart. We're not talking about the heart where the blood is. We're talking about that inner core, that being. I can't see my mind. I know where my brain is, but my emotions, there's not a place, right? So we're talking about the invisible drives the visible. What's going on here is going to show up in terms of how I perform. And so we're coaching up those things that are unseen, not to the neglect of what's seen, but along with. This is not an either or. This is a both. But we understand that the inside drives the outside, and so we make sure our ducks are in the row in coaching the inside. How's he doing mentally? How's he doing emotionally? How's he doing spiritually? Are questions we ask within this philosophy, and not just is he prepared technically to play. Again, all, not one or the other, all those things are treated at the same time. We just know if we're going to err, we want to make sure the inside is right, because that will shut down faster than the outside. The weak over the strong, fourth point of the 5, the weak over the strong. And that's just a principle of God's heart for the poor and the powerless. The young over the old, protect the weak, protect the young. What does that mean? That means on teams, the poor and the powerless, we're not talking about finances there, we're talking about the guys that don't naturally get the sugar that other guys do. So the weak in a team are going to be often underclassmen who are younger, people that don't play as much or at all, people that don't have as much talent, people whose roles aren't on the field, but they're very important. Managers are very important. Trainers are very important. They don't actually play in the game, but they're critical to what happens within the game based on them doing their jobs outside of the actual game and sometimes during the game. These are the people that need special emphasis and support because the game itself doesn't naturally give it to them, if that makes sense. And so we're always thinking about the guy who doesn't play. How is he feeling? What is he thinking? Because any one of those guys who don't play can end up being an asset or a liability to the greater good of the program. If they're grumbling behind the scenes, if they're slandering behind the scenes, if they're lazy behind the scenes, if they're frolicking in ways that are problematic behind the scenes, it tears down the program. And at some point, it's going to show up in terms of the play's output and synergy because of the other principles we've talked about, unity and disunity, belief and unbelief. And so we need those people. It's the manna principle. He who had much did not have too much, the manna, the bread in the Old Testament. He who had little did not have too little. We make sure that those who have much don't have too much. We make sure that those who have little don't have too little. We make sure that there's not equality in terms of exact amount, but it's proportioned. So we're always making sure that those are on the invisible side of the spectrum, on the poor and powerless side of the spectrum, that they're encouraged. That would be the bus driver. In cafeterias, that'd be the people that are doing the food. They tend to be disrespected. It's their job. Well, it is their job, but who wouldn't want to be encouraged in their job? So in our culture, when you go to away games, you shake hands with the bus driver, you look them in the eye, you tell them thank you. You engage with the people, the hotel desk workers, or in the cafeteria line. You say, thanks for working today. Well, somebody would say they're supposed to work. They're getting paid for it. Well, you're getting paid too. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve or want an encouraging word. And so we make sure that we're thinking about the people. It's like on a team, the way I know when I visit a college and consult them, I know what the feel of the school is when I go inside the cafeteria. Are different races eating together or separately? Are the athletes separate of the rest of the student body? Do the athletes have their feet up on the desks like they're ruling like a mob over the school? Can I tell who the athletes are? Generally, you can. That's unfortunately. I'd love them to be so embedded in the school that the school is one family, and it's not like there's a team and then there's a school. Well, this team are also, they're not just players, they're students. And if they're not student athletes first, if they're athletes who are students, you're going to see that in the cafeteria. You're going to see that in the dorms. You're going to see it everywhere. And it's problematic. It's not sin. It's problematic if your desire is to have a culture where people want each other to succeed, and we people are blessing people who are not like them, and you're caring about the guy in the cafeteria who's eating by himself. Here's what I'd like on our teams. Our athletes come into the cafeteria and say, instead of saying, where's my buddies? Where's it fun to sit? They at least have on their brain, is there somebody who looks alone, disenfranchised, separate? Can I go up to them and say, how you doing? Do you mind if I sit with you? That's a tremendous way to build a school culture and to use sports to create a school culture. Frankly, in a lot of the schools, whether they're high schools, junior highs, or even small colleges, the student body is going to have a significant a number of males that are in sport-related stuff. And if their culture, and sports tend to be intimidating to non-athletes because the athletes tend to, unfortunately, in general, strong personalities, aggressive personalities, tend to be driven by ego. I'm not saying this is good. And so, in a sense, it's about me, me, me. And when you teach them through sport to think about others and the disenfranchised and the poor and the powerless and the people that are feeling compromised in some way for whatever reason, they get an eye to look out for them on your team. It's the upperclassmen looking to serve the lowerclassmen. It's the opposite of the mentality as we're now junior and seniors, we're in charge now, we tell you what to do. No, you've given up your rights of being your age of maturity in terms of chronological to serve the young kids. What kind of team you'd have? Frosty created a team where the young guys, he called them the Bombers, that's a separate story, but those young guys were embraced and embedded in the team from the first week. He set up a scenario they called Breakaway, where they became embedded within the culture of the team from the very beginning. So they didn't come out as the freshmen or the guys who will never play or the guys who would redshirt. They were part of the team, and we ran to them like the father of the prodigal son runs to the prodigal son. He doesn't wait for the prodigal son to earn the right. He runs to him. And in the teams we've created, the culture is we want the upperclassmen to the young guys and embrace them, to invite them in, to make sure they know they're part of the family. My 6-year-old is not less in the family than my 23-year-old just because he's been around longer. Is we actually are thinking about serving the 6-year-old because she's vulnerable. Our goal is to make sure she feels great and is taken care of because she can't take care of herself. This is how it works in families. You don't say, hey, I'm 20, I deserve the right, I've been around here longer, and I'm in charge of you. I'm now in charge of you. We call that lordship. We're servant warriors. We're there to lead and to serve. And on teams, that's how it works. The guys that get the most sugar serve the guys that traditionally get the least sugar. That's how everybody feels like they matter, they have value, irregardless of performance, irregardless of chronology, irregardless of experience and apparent maturity. Because the most mature are going to be the ones that go first and go further. The most mature are going to be the ones that die and give their life away. So in our healthy cultures, the head coach is serving the assistants, the coaching staff are serving the players, the upper class players or the more experienced players or the older players are serving the younger players. That's how you create a culture of unity and camaraderie and synergy. Young over the old. Protect the weak and the young. Protect them. The weak and young are those that get the least sugar. They're injured. They don't play. They're physically younger. They're new to the system. They're not even people on the field, managers and trainers. Fifth one foundation is interdependence over independence. And that would be, this is together. We're more together than we are separately. You do retain your individual personality. We're not trying to create clones. We want distinct, unique persons that God made specially the way they are, and we want them to retain it while they submit it to the whole. So their attitude is biblical, right? Consider others better than yourself. Rather than saying, this is just who I am, I do what I want to do, it's considering others better than yourselves. It's Paul's attitude. He said, I want to be all things to all men, so all possible ways I can save some. If I like meat and it offends you, I'll never eat meat again. This is the heart that we're getting at. We want the heart of what's best for the team. Even though it's not best for me, if it's best for the team, that's what I want. That's what we're trying to create. Is I'm going to take my independence and I'm going to submit it and become interdependent, which means I get the benefits and the responsibilities. You don't just get benefits. When you get increased benefits, you got increased responsibilities, and that's all taught within the context of sport so they can learn how to be a great husband, a great father, a great worker, a friend, or obviously a wife, a mother, a friend and worker. This is what we're trained to create. We do it through sport. We teach these values that cross sport into life in every single area. Again, team over individual, long-term over short, inside versus outside, weak over the strong, and interdependence over independence.